The email came at 7:52 a.m. Tuesday. Subject line, urgent HR meeting required. I'm 52 years old. I've survived combat deployments, system crashes at 3 a.m., and 24 years of corporate politics. But my gut still clenched when I read those words. Turns out my gut was right. Rick Torres, that's me. Senior systems engineer at Caldwell Logistics since January 2001. Started here when I was 28, fresh out of Navy IT, when Howard Caldwell himself shook my hand and said he needed someone who understood systems that actually worked. I didn't finish reading the email, just pushed back from my desk and walked. When HR calls you in before 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, it's never about your performance review. The HR office sits behind the copy rooms like they're ashamed of what happens in there. I knocked twice and walked in. Neil Parker, 40-something company man with nervous eyes, sat shuffling papers like he was dealing cards, wouldn't look at me directly. "Rick, thanks for coming in early," he said to his desk. "This won't take long." The door opened behind me. Brittany Caldwell walked in, 31 years old, Northwestern MBA, Howard's daughter. Sharp blazer, perfect hair, and that practiced smile they teach in business school, the kind that never reaches the eyes. "Rick," she said, settling into Neil's guest chair like she owned the place, which she basically did. "I know this feels sudden, but we've been conducting a comprehensive review of organizational efficiency in preparation for our strategic modernization initiatives." I stayed standing. 24 years in the Navy and corporate America teaches you when to sit and when to stay ready to move. "We're restructuring several legacy positions to align with our technological advancement goals," she continued. "MBA speak flowing smooth as motor oil. Unfortunately, your current role has been identified as redundant with our new digital transformation strategy." She paused, probably waiting for me to ask questions or beg for my job. Instead, I just waited. "Austin Brooks, our new Chief Innovation Officer, has already reviewed your work. Frankly, we're surprised it functioned at all. Very outdated approach." She gave that smile again. "We need systems that scale with modern business practices." There it was. 24 years of keeping their operation running, dismissed with corporate buzzwords and a condescending smile. No mention of the time I rebuilt their entire logistics platform in my garage when their vendor went bankrupt. No mention of the midnight calls when their systems crashed and I drove in to fix problems nobody else understood. "Effective immediately," she added, like she was ordering coffee. I didn't ask why, didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me argue or plead. Instead, I reached into my laptop bag, pulled out my company laptop, and set it on Neil's desk. The thing landed with a solid thunk that made both of them jump. "Passwords change in 30 minutes, I said. Then I turned and walked out, my office. Sat on the third floor, corner spot overlooking the loading docks where I'd watched thousands of trucks come and go, 24 years of accumulated life spread across 2 desk drawers and a filing cabinet. Family photo from last summer's trip to Yellowstone. My old Navy coffee mug with the chip on the handle. A Leatherman multi-tool my father gave me when I first got hired, said every man needs good tools for any job. The Leatherman went into my jacket pocket. The photo and mug went into a small box. Everything else could stay. I've learned not to get attached to things I can't carry. Security didn't even look up when I walked past the front desk. They probably figured I'd sit in my truck and have a moment. Maybe call my wife, tell her what happened. That's what most people do when their world gets turned upside down before their second cup of coffee. Instead, I drove straight home to our place on Maple Street, hung up my jacket, and went to the garage. In the back corner, behind 2 broken fishing rods and a stack of old license plates, sat my filing cabinet. Gray metal, scratched from years of moves, with a combination lock that hadn't been opened in over 10 years. My daughter Sarah's birthday. Reversed. 180994 became 499081. The lock clicked open on the first try. Inside, beneath layers of warranty papers and old tax documents, was the folder I'd been unconsciously saving for a day like this. The original employment contract from March 2001, when Howard was desperate enough to hire anyone who could keep his systems from crashing every other week. I spread the pages across my workbench next to my socket wrench set. Standard employment agreement, non-compete clause, benefit details, nothing special until page 3. There, buried in the middle of section 7, subsection C, was the clause that was about to change everything. All intellectual property developed independently, using personal equipment and resources, remains the sole property of the developer. Any company restructuring affecting positions tied to said intellectual property requires developer consultation and approval if systems remain in active production. I read it twice, then actually laughed out loud. Howard had signed it himself, his signature right there in blue ink. March 22, 2001. 4 weeks after I'd rebuilt their entire logistics platform from this very garage because their main server had crashed and their vendor wanted $67,000 for a replacement. That system was still running. They'd updated the interface over the years, slapped new logos on it, called it Caldwell Smart Logistics or some marketing nonsense. But underneath all the pretty graphics was my code, my architecture, my solution to problems that kept Howard awake at night back in 2001. I scanned every page of that contract, saved it as a PDF, then pulled out the thumb drive I'd kept as insurance since day one. The one with my original source code, development logs, and timestamps proving I'd built the whole thing on my own equipment, in my own time, solving problems the expensive consultants couldn't figure out. While the files copied over, I thought about Brittany's strategic modernization initiatives and digital transformation strategy. Wondered if she'd bothered to read any contracts before she started swinging her MBA around. Wondered if Austin Brooks, her boyfriend turned chief innovation officer, had any clue what he was walking into. The fuel optimization algorithm alone tracked 47 different variables in real-time weather, traffic, fuel prices, driver schedules, vehicle maintenance windows, load weights, delivery windows. It automatically adjusted routes every 15 minutes, saved them about $180,000 annually in fuel costs, and reduced delivery times by an average of 23 minutes per route. Austin probably thought it was magic, or outdated according to Brittany. By 10 a.m., I had 2 emails ready to send. One to my lawyer with the subject line Contract Violation Section 7C Review Required. The other to Howard Caldwell himself with a simple subject: We need to talk. I attached the contract PDF to both emails, hit send, and sat back in my garage surrounded by tools and memories, waiting for the phone to ring. Because when you've spent 24 years keeping someone's business running and they decide to throw you away without reading the fine print, well, sometimes they discover exactly what you were worth. The first call came 18 minutes later. Howard's voice came through shaky, like he'd aged 10 years since Friday. Rick, Jesus Christ, I just found the termination paperwork on my desk. She didn't run this by me. Little late for that conversation, Howard. I'm looking at your contract right now. Section 7C. Long pause. This is bad, isn't it? Depends on how you want to handle it. Can you give me 48 hours? I need to sort this out with Brittany and legal before this gets worse. I sat in my garage, looking at my tools hanging neat and organized on the pegboard my grandfather built in 1967. Same tools, same problems, different day. You got 48 hours. After that, I'm making other calls. The system started falling apart Tuesday afternoon. Nothing dramatic at first, just little glitches that used to get caught and fixed before anyone in management noticed. A shipping manifest that couldn't find its matching invoice. Fuel routing algorithms that defaulted to backup settings nobody remembered how to modify. Danny Walsh, the DevOps guy who actually understood how things connected, started getting calls around 2 p.m. Dispatch supervisors asking why their route optimization was running 40 minutes behind schedule. Danny pulled up the monitoring dashboard and saw what I'd been expecting: error rates climbing steadily since Monday morning. My fuel algorithm wasn't just tracking those 47 variables for fun. Each one fed into decision trees that adjusted routes in real time. Weather data changed fuel consumption calculations. Traffic patterns shifted delivery windows. Driver breaks requirements affected scheduling. Remove the interconnections and the whole system starts making decisions based on incomplete information. By Wednesday morning, the problems were getting harder to ignore. A $3.7 million freight shipment bound for Dallas vanished from the tracking system. Not delayed, not rerouted, just gone. The kind of error that used to trigger my pager at 3 a.m., back when I cared enough to lose sleep over their problems. Austin Brooks was discovering that Chief Innovation Officer meant more than sitting in meetings talking about digital transformation synergy. The inventory management system I'd built was throwing cascade failures faster than he could Google what the error codes meant. 3 distribution centers lost synchronization with the main database, leaving $47,000 worth of products unaccounted for. Austin tried the smart approach first, hired a consultant from Chicago. some hotshot from a firm that charged $450 an hour to look at problems they didn't understand. The guy took one look at my code architecture and told Austin he'd need 8 months and a team of 6 developers to rebuild it properly. Price tag, $1.2 million, minimum. That's when Austin got desperate and stupid. Thursday afternoon, he called Danny into his office and asked if there was a way to streamline the legacy code. Maybe remove some of the older functions that seemed redundant. Danny pulled up the system documentation, 73 pages of handwritten notes, flowcharts, and dependency maps that I'd kept in physical binders, because I don't trust clouds to remember everything important. All cross-referenced, all essential, all built over 24 years of solving problems that textbooks don't cover. You can't just delete pieces, Danny explained. It's like removing load-bearing walls from a building. Mr. Torres designed everything to work together. Austin didn't want to hear that. He wanted a quick fix, something to show Brittany that he had the situation under control. So he did what every amateur does when they're in, over their head. He started changing things he didn't understand. Friday morning, Austin optimized what he thought were redundant database queries. Turned out those redundant queries were fail-safes, backup processes that kept the system running when primary connections hiccuped. Without them, the whole network started choking on its own data. By noon, 7 regional distribution centers were running on manual processes that hadn't been used since 2003. Drivers were calling dispatch asking where their loads were. Customers were calling asking where their shipments were. Dispatchers were working 12-hour shifts trying to manually calculate routes that my system used to generate in 15 minutes. The fuel waste alone was costing them $12,000 per week. Routes that used to average 8.1 miles per gallon were dropping to 5.8 because drivers were taking longer, less efficient paths. Order processing that used to take 3 minutes per shipment was now requiring 45 minutes when the system was working and 6 hours when it crashed, which it was doing every 4 hours, like clockwork. That's when Brittany went into full panic mode, demanding hourly status reports from Austin and twice daily briefings from the IT department. She'd gone from confident MBA to someone realizing that outdated approaches sometimes work better than modern solutions. Monday morning brought the cascade failure I'd been waiting for. Austin had spent the weekend trying to modernize the route calculation engine, replacing my weather-adjusted algorithms with something he'd found in a logistics textbook. The new system couldn't handle real-time data feeds, couldn't adjust for driver preferences, and couldn't account for vehicle maintenance schedules. The result? 200 trucks sitting in parking lots waiting for routes that never came. Dispatchers calling drivers with handwritten directions, customers threatening to cancel contracts, and Howard Caldwell getting calls from board members asking why their logistics costs had jumped 35% in 2 weeks. That's when Howard called me the second time. "Rick, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But we're bleeding money. Is there any way you could consult for us, just until we stabilize?" I was sitting on my back porch drinking coffee from my Navy mug and watching my neighbor work on his '78 Camaro. Beautiful machine, probably worth more now than when it was new. The kind of engineering that lasts because someone built it right the first time. "Consulting rates are $175 an hour," I said. 50-hour minimum commitment, payment up front. Done. When can you start? "I'm not starting anything, Howard. I'm finishing something." "What do you mean?" "I mean Section 7C of my contract. You want to use my system, you need my approval. And my approval comes with terms." "What kind of terms?" "The kind that recognize what my work is worth. Back pay for the 6 days I've been gone, licensing fees for system usage during my absence, and a consulting agreement that protects both of us going forward." Silence on the other end. Then a long sigh. "How much are we talking about?" $1,429 back pay, $15,000 licensing setup fee, $2,500 monthly system usage fee, retroactive to my termination date, and $6,500 monthly consulting retainer. Jesus, Rick, that's what happens when you fire the guy who built your entire operation and then realize you can't run it without him. Another pause. "Can you come in Wednesday? We'll have legal review everything and get this sorted out. I'll be there. But Howard?" "Yeah?" "Next time your daughter wants to modernize something, maybe check with the people who built it first." I hung up and went back to watching my neighbor work on his Camaro. Some things are worth preserving. Some things work better when you don't try to fix what isn't broken. And sometimes, the best way to prove your value is to let people see what happens when you're not there. Wednesday. Morning. I walked back into Caldwell Logistics carrying a folder and wearing the same jeans and work shirt I'd worn to rebuild my garage workbench. Reception looked confused. They'd probably been told I was gone for good. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, executive territory, and walked straight into the conference room where Brittany was holding her crisis meeting. Austin was there, looking like he hadn't slept since Friday. Neil from HR sat in the corner taking notes nobody would read. Danny was at the whiteboard explaining something with charts and graphs that nobody understood. They all stopped talking when I walked in. "Rick," Brittany started, but I cut her off. I dropped my folder on the conference table with a solid thump. Settlement agreement. Full recognition of intellectual property rights, back pay for time lost, licensing fees for unauthorized system usage, and consulting contract for ongoing maintenance. Brittany's MBA confidence was nowhere to be found. 2 weeks of system failures had replaced her practiced smile with something approaching panic. "We can negotiate terms. No negotiation. Accept the terms, or I walk this across town to Peterson Freight. They've been asking about my availability." Austin finally spoke up, voice hoarse from too much coffee and not enough sleep. "Look, man, we just need to know how to fix the routing optimization. The manual calculations are killing us. The routing issue exists because you deleted my weather integration protocols. The fuel waste exists because you removed my real-time adjustment algorithms. The system crashes exist because you tried to modernize something that was already optimized." I looked at Howard, who'd been quiet through the whole thing. He looked older than his 67 years, like the stress was eating him from the inside. "You taught me something when you hired me, Howard. You said good systems don't just work, they fail gracefully. Your daughter hired someone who doesn't understand the difference." The room went dead quiet. Brittany's face had shifted from confident to something approaching desperation. Austin was staring at his laptop screen like it might give him answers it had been refusing to provide for 2 weeks. I opened my folder and pulled out the contract breakdown. Back pay for 6 days, $1,429. System licensing setup, $15,000. Monthly usage fee going forward, $2,500. Monthly consulting retainer, $6,500. Total immediate payment, $16,429. That's... Austin started. "That's what it costs when you fire someone without reading their contract," I said. "Danny, show them the system performance metrics from the past 2 weeks." Danny clicked through his laptop. Charts appeared on the wall screen, red lines trending down, error rates spiking, cost overruns climbing like a fever chart. "Fuel efficiency down 28%, Danny read. Average delivery times up 41%. System uptime down to 67%. Manual override requirements up 340%. In dollar terms?" Howard asked quietly. $73,000 additional fuel costs. $28,000 in overtime for manual dispatch. $47,000 in inventory discrepancies. Customer service complaints up 250%. I let that sink in. "So you've already paid for my settlement twice over, just in the past 2 weeks. Question is whether you want to keep bleeding money or start fixing the problem." Brittany found her voice. "This is still extortion." "No, this is consulting. You made a business decision to terminate my employment. I'm making a business decision to license my intellectual property at market rates. Don't like the terms? Build your own system." Austin laughed, but it wasn't humor. "Market rates? You're charging premium prices for old code that works. Your modern solutions have cost Howard more in 2 weeks than my consulting will cost in 2 years. Howard had been reading the contract terms while we talked. "The licensing is retroactive to your termination. System's been running my code since day 1. You want to use it, you pay for it. That's how intellectual property works. And if we sign this, what happens to Austin?" I looked at the kid who'd tried to replace 24 years of experience with 6 months of MBA confidence. "That's not my problem. You hired him, you figure out what to do with him. But if he touches my systems again without supervision, the consulting rates double." The signing took 25 minutes. Howard's signature on every page, witnessed by Neil from HR and Danny from IT. Legal had reviewed everything twice, looking for loopholes that didn't exist. The contract I'd signed in 2001 was solid, written back when Howard actually read the things he put his name on. When it was done, Howard walked me to the elevator. You know she was trying to help the company, right? All this modernization talk, she thought she was making us more competitive. Maybe she was trying to help. But good intentions don't fix broken systems. She's young, she'll learn. Maybe. But she's going to learn expensive. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in and turned back. Howard? Next time someone tells you they're going to modernize your operation, maybe ask them what they're going to replace it with first. I spent the next 3 weeks putting things back together. Not just the code Austin had mangled, but the processes, the documentation, the institutional knowledge that walks out the door when you fire people without thinking. Danny helped where he could, but mostly I worked alone, the way I always had. The fuel optimization came back online first. Truck efficiency jumped from 5.8 back to 8.1 miles per gallon almost immediately. Route calculation times dropped from 6 hours back to 15 minutes. Dispatch supervisors stopped working overtime. Drivers stopped calling for directions. Brittany stayed out of the IT areas entirely. Didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge what had happened, just avoided anywhere I might be working. Austin was reassigned to strategic planning, which is corporate speak for we don't know what to do with. But we can't fire you yet. The system stabilized. Orders processed correctly. Shipments arrived on schedule. Customers stopped complaining. The crisis passed, the way crises do when you fix the actual problem instead of just treating symptoms. But I wasn't done. Peterson Freight had been serious about their offer. $89,000 base salary, equity stake, and the title of Chief Technology Officer. They'd been watching Caldwell's struggles with professional interest, especially after word got around about system failures and management changes. We need someone who understands that technology serves the business, not the other way around, their CEO had told me. Someone who builds things that last instead of things that look good in PowerPoint presentations. I gave Howard 30 days notice. Professional courtesy, nothing more. He took it better than I expected. Can't say I blame you, he said, after everything that happened. It's not about what happened. It's about what's going to happen next. Meaning your daughter's still in charge of operations, and she still thinks the problem was my methods, not her decisions. Howard nodded slowly. He knew his daughter better than anyone, knew she wasn't the type to admit mistakes or learn from expensive lessons. The consulting contract still stands, for now, but Peterson's building their own platform, modern architecture, cloud-based, scalable. When that's ready, this conversation gets more interesting. My last day at Caldwell was a Friday in February. No party, no cake, no speeches about 24 years of service. Just cleaned out my desk, turned in my badge, and walked to the parking lot where Howard was waiting by my truck. 24 years, he said. Feels like we should mark it somehow. We did, with a contract that protects what I built. He handed me an envelope. Consulting bonus for the transition period. I looked inside. Check for $8,500. You didn't have to do this. Yeah, I did. Maybe not legally, but... He looked back at the building. She's my daughter, Rick. I love her. But I should have talked to you before any of this happened. Expensive lessons stick better, Howard. Maybe she'll remember this one. 6 months later, Peterson Freight launched their new logistics platform. Modern architecture, cloud-based, scalable, and completely independent of anything I'd built at Caldwell. I'd spent those months designing something from scratch, applying 24 years of lessons learned to build what I wished I'd had back in 2001. The day after launch, my phone rang. Brittany's number. Rick, this is Brittany Caldwell. I hope you're doing well at Peterson. What can I do for you, Brittany? We've been discussing strategic partnership opportunities. Given your new position, we thought there might be synergies between our operations. I almost laughed. You want to discuss partnerships? Talk to our sales department. Rick, I think we got off on the wrong foot. No, we got off on exactly the right foot. You made a business decision. I made a business decision. Everything worked out. The licensing fees are substantial. We're hoping we could negotiate more competitive terms. The terms are what they are. You signed the contract. Long pause. Austin's no longer with the company. That's unfortunate. It wasn't, but no point being petty about it. We'd like to bring you back. Chief Technology Officer. Full autonomy over IT operations. $95,000 base plus performance bonuses. I sat in my new office at Peterson, looking out at the loading docks where trucks moved with military precision. Our system tracked everything in real time. Drivers knew their routes before they finished their coffee. Dispatch handled 300% more volume with the same staff size. I appreciate the offer, Brittany, but I'm not interested. The salary is negotiable. It's not about salary. It's about understanding what systems are for. I don't understand. Systems aren't there to look modern or impress investors. They're there to solve problems. Your father understood that in 2001. You didn't in 2025. Another pause. We're willing to give you complete authority over technology decisions. You already tried that. Didn't work out. I could hear her frustration building. The entitled confidence was gone, replaced by something that sounded like desperation. What would it take? Nothing. There's nothing you could offer that would make me come back. Why? I thought about that question. Not the business reasons or the professional reasons, but the real reason. Because trust is like a system, Brittany. Once you break it, you can patch it and work around it, but it's never the same. And I don't build things that are meant to break. The licensing agreement with Caldwell is still active. They pay their $20,500 monthly fee, I maintain their legacy systems remotely, and everyone pretends the whole mess never happened. Danny handles the day-to-day technical issues, following my documentation like it's gospel, which it basically is, since nobody else understands how the pieces fit together. The system still works, routes calculate properly, shipments arrive on schedule, fuel efficiency stays consistent. But it's maintenance mode now, keeping something alive rather than building something new. Howard retired 8 months after I left. Officially, it was for health reasons, but everyone knew the real story. The board had lost confidence after the Austin disaster. Brittany took over as CEO, which was probably always the plan, just happened 3 years earlier than expected. She's running the company competently enough. Nothing innovative, nothing groundbreaking, just following the procedures and hoping nothing breaks. The kind of management that keeps things stable but never pushes boundaries. Austin Brooks landed at a startup in Austin, Texas, still calling himself a digital transformation evangelist according to his LinkedIn. Still speaking at conferences about agile methodology and disruptive innovation. Some people never learn, they just find new places to practice their mistakes. Me? I'm Chief Technology Officer at Peterson Freight, building systems that work and training people who understand that good technology is invisible. When it's working right, nobody notices it. When it breaks, everybody knows immediately. We've grown 40% in the past year, not because we have the flashiest interfaces or the trendiest buzzwords, but because our systems do what they're supposed to do. Trucks leave on time. Shipments arrive intact. Customers get what they ordered when they expected it. Simple concepts, but apparently harder to execute than you'd think. My team is small, 6 developers, 2 system administrators, Danny Walsh, who I hired away from Caldwell after his contract expired. We build things that last. We document everything. We test thoroughly before we deploy. Old-fashioned approaches that work better than modern methodologies. The garage filing cabinet still holds that original contract from 2001. Not because I need it anymore, but because it reminds me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is read the fine print. Howard understood that when he signed it. Brittany learned it the expensive way. Every quarter, the licensing check arrives from Caldwell. $7,500 automatic withdrawal, processed without discussion. It's not about the money anymore. $30,000 annually is nice, but not life-changing. It's about the principle. They wanted to use what I built. They pay for the privilege. Some Friday evenings, I drive past the old Caldwell building on my way home. The loading dock's still busy, trucks still moving, lights still on in the dispatch office. From the outside, everything looks the same, but I know what's running underneath all that activity. My code, my architecture, my solutions to problems that someone else is getting credit for solving. That used to bother me. Not anymore. I park in my driveway and walk into the garage where my workbench sits neat and organized, tools hanging on the pegboard my grandfather built. The socket wrench set sits right where I left it, ready for whatever needs fixing. Good tools last, good systems last, good work lasts. That contract sits in the filing cabinet right next to my socket wrench set. Both are tools. Both do exactly what they're supposed to do. And both remind me that the best revenge isn't getting mad or getting even, it's being right, having proof, and watching them pay for it. Every single quarter. 24 years I spent building something that worked. Took them 2 weeks to break it. Took me 3 weeks to fix it. And now they'll spend the next 20 years paying me to keep it running. Some lessons cost money. The expensive ones stick. And some systems are too valuable to replace, even when the person who built them is gone. Especially then. I close the garage door, turn off the lights, and head inside. Tomorrow's Saturday. Maybe I'll work on the Camaro. Maybe I'll just sit on the porch and drink coffee. Either way, somewhere across town, the system I built is running smooth and quiet, solving problems, making money, and proving that sometimes the old ways work just fine, as long as you build them right the first time.